5 minutes, so I'm going to start now. Okay. Can we get a show of hands who's a designer only, like not a developer, kind of designer? Who's developers? Everyone else who doesn't know what they are? Awesome. Thanks to Kath for her presentation, because I've always wondered what designers do. So I'm a web developer, so I do back-end stuff. I do the APIs, the servers, the infrastructure. I get my down and gritty in PHP. So what normally happens is I end up with a PSD file, and I look at it and go, oh, right, okay, I need to implement that. So it's good to know that all this stuff that the designers actually do, you know, just to get to the point, open up the code. Okay. Sometimes I get asked what tools I use, so I put them all down here. These are not all the ones I use, but they're kind of the main ones that I use. So I'll quickly run through them so you don't have to ask them later on. So I use WAMP, which is Windows, Apache, MySQL, and PHP. I'm a Windows person, not a Mac person. I do use WAMP, which is Linux, Apache, MySQL, PHP. But I've also used recently Lin, which you might not be familiar with. That's Linux, Nginx, MySQL, and PHP. Nginx is awesome. PHP Storm, that's my PHP IDE, that's my editor. I used to use Dreamweaver from Adobe, but I found PHP Storm and it's just totally amazing. Tortoise SVN, if you ever do plugins or themes and you upload to WordPress.org, you still have to use SVN, it's their version control system. So I've got that in my system. Git is another version control system. It's the kind of the new daddy of the blog. It's brilliant. I'll go into Git a little bit later on. GitHub, we use GitHub for all of our public repositories, not private ones. We use Bitbucket because you have to pay GitHub to have private repositories, and Bitbucket can give them for free. So if I pay, you can get it for free. We use Grunt. Grunt is a JavaScript task runner. Okay? It does all these mundane things that you have to do as a web developer at the end of the project. Things like minifying your CSS, compressing all your JPEGs, compiling your SAS stuff, concatenating all your JS files. Once you set it up, I just type Grunt in the command line. It does it all for me. It's fantastic. These things, Uplify is getting rid of your CSS, all the spaces. ImageMint compresses the images. Compass uses your SAS like the CSS and cat puts them all together. CSS Lint is best practices. It'll look through all your CSS codes and make sure you're doing the best practice stuff. PHP Lint is exactly the same for PHP, so it looks for things like functions and just the right coding standards for those. JSHint is your JavaScript typo. It'll look through your JavaScript and see if there's any errors in that. Throw up a great big warning page. You'll never miss that, by the way. And Watch is a little thing that runs with Grunt, and it watches all your SAS stuff, and it automatically compiles it as you change it into CSS, which is quite handy. And PHP Unit for unit testing. I might look that a little bit later on. Okay, moving on. Vagrant. Vagrant allows you to boot up virtual operating systems. So if you want a Mac or a CentOS 6.3, just boot up one of those. The good thing about Vagrant is that it allows you to have a common development platform if you've used kind of lots of contractors in the project. VirtualBox is something similar. It does pretty much the same thing on a PC. SAS, which is semantically awesome style sheets. It says, oh really? FTP for clients who still under shared hosting. I don't particularly like that because it's not very secure. We use Secure FTP, SFTP when we can. WinSPC is my FTP client. It's really good because when you launch it, it puts up a master password, which means that people can't get at your password, so it asks you for master password first. SSH is secure something. It basically allows you to log into VPSs into Linux. Putty is a client that I use for SSH controls, so it's a pretty good client. Notepad, I think Notepad's fantastic. Have you ever copied something on the web and then tried to paste it in WordPress? You know, all these divs and fonts and stuff. Just copy it to Notepad, copy it out, Notepad, and paste it back in, get rid of all the HTML. I've not found a better tool than Notepad for that. Firefox with Firebug is awesome. Chrome with Inspector. Chrome's my kind of default web browser, so I'm in that most of the time. It's got something called Inspector, which is very close to Firebug, but Firebug's got a few extra little options. Internet Explorer, unfortunately. Safari, Opera. I use BrowserStack. BrowserStack is like a virtual browser renderer, so you can go, it's a paid service, but you go in and say, look, I want to run this website against IE 8, 7, 9, whatever. So if you don't have access to all the browser to test yourself, you can pay for that service. It's pretty good. Arrakis Merge allows you to have two different files, and you put them in window, and it shows you all the differences between them. It's very good for diff files, and you can copy things across and just see what's changed. I use this a lot of times for my developers that we subcontract to. We have some developer guidelines that are about that high, and unfortunately our subcontractors would read them. So I usually end up with a diff file and say, look, we created this file, we told you not to change all of our bespoke functions, but you have, go and update it. So it's good things for seeing what's changed in the files. IceChat, I kind of log into the WordPress.org guys, where you do like make core, make plugins, make theme. We have a dev chat every week. So sometimes I'll get up at 7 o'clock in the morning, it's a specific time. But they're always on IRC, so IceChat is an IRC client for that. Skype, I use Skype Premium, so for contractors and clients, whoever, it's always nice to see a pretty face. So I've got the premium one that allows you to do group video chats. Composer, you might not have heard of Composer, but it is it's a dependency package manager for PHP. I'll go into it a little bit. Project Libra, I'm a little bit old school. I like my Microsoft project style things with Gantt charts and milestones. So I use Project Libra just for myself and my development things. As a company, we use Basecamp for the majority of our communications. Okay. We use SlickPlan as well. SlickPlan's really cool. I'll talk about that later. It allows you to create site content and structure. Photoshop, obviously. Illustrator for vector fonts. Gmail, can't do without Gmail. Google Drive is our kind of main backup repository for all of our documents. Google Apps we use, we've got the premium one for that. We're actually Google Apps distributor. Yeah. Zip, every developer uses WinZip. Time Doctor we use for tracking not only contractors' time, but for our ones ourselves, just so we've got an idea as to how much time we spend on development guidelines and things. And of course, Winamp for just plug it in and just chill and simple. So that's it, basically. So project kickoff. Right. A caveat: I don't do any of the sales part of my business. We have a business, it's called Line Canvas, it's incorporated in Ireland. We're looking to incorporate here in Australia this year. But my business manager is back in Ireland. He does sales and marketing. He's very, very good at it. So this is what's in my head. This is what I assume happens. Okay. So a client will come to us and say, hey, you need a website. You do these kind of things, don't you? And of course we'll say, sure, yeah, what stuff do you want? And say, la la la, big slider, la 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 la, e-commerce, la 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 la, Black Friday. Yeah? Of course, our response is, whoa, do you got any money or content for that? And you go, sure, we've got oodles. Like, fantastic, here, go and sign this contract. So that's what happens in my head. This is what my business partner does. Okay. So after that, it usually comes to me. Okay. So this is a kind of general step of what we do. Okay? So we do a kind of detailed requirement gathering. Okay. So we look at features that they want, and the environment. So not just the new one that we're putting onto, but the old one, because they might want to move it because it might be panics. Okay. But we need to know what they've got. We need to get access. Who's got the domain name, who's got the hosting, so we get copies of the files. Content copy, Kath talked about that. That is so, you actually need content from clients. You really can't do websites without content. I need that up first. There's only so much you can do with forum, Ipsum, blah, blah, blah. You really need to understand the content. what it's about, what to do with it, what they want to sell it to, who's going to be using it, who's going to be viewing it. You know, so without that up front, your kind of project's almost doomed to failure. Timescales, we also need to know when they wanted this thing up and running by. Do they have any marketing? Do they have any events that they're going to be showcasing this at? And responsibilities. And responsibilities is twofold. Yes, we've got responsibility to deliver the site, but they've got responsibilities, for example, who's the budget owner, who's got the money to be paying us. We need to know that. Who's going to be supplying the content? Is it going to be some guy that only works 2 days a week part-time? So we need to clearly know responsibilities from us and also from our clients, keep them in check. Step 2, once that's all done, is we get the design prototypes from the graphic designers. What we do is we ask for, we've got the guidelines set, so we ask for homepage templates, particular type of different templates like a blog, a contact page, or custom type templates for that. We'll always ask for responsive web design templates for those. So if we get a homepage layout, then we want a responsive layout for Android, so 320 width. We want one for iPad as well, both in portrait modes, just to see what it's going to look like. Yes.
Do you only do bespoke design? Like, do you start at any place, or do you just...
Yes, we do. Yeah, so we'll look for different styles, different types of templates, and then once we get those designs, we then do a big review for those, and this is where I kind of get cued in. So my business partner looks at it from a usability point of view, how's the customer going to navigate, how are they going to find the landing pages, how are they going to get it to convert, is it easy enough as a 20-step click for them to actually buy something, or is it just a 2-click step? Those sort of things. I'm looking from a technical point of view, so I'll be sitting there looking at the design going, geez, how am I going to build that sort of thing? Yeah. We had this one design that came back and it looked really cool, and the designer had created a kind of blog index page, archive page, in the kind of metro style that Windows 8 is. So they had big boxes, and then thin boxes, and then rectangle boxes. And I looked at it and went, wait a minute, if this is meant to be kind of news articles, how are you going to fit a news post in this big, thin block? It's going to have a title, an image, just won't work. So things like that, you've got to sit down and just look through the designs, just see how you're going to implement it. So I try and identify page templates, custom post types, different formats, fonts as well. It's a big thing to know what fonts, because fonts may look lovely in Photoshop and look pants in Chrome or Internet Explorer. So you've always got to check fonts. And just generally custom features, just anything that jumps out from a technical point of view that you would say, how do I develop that? Because a lot of the time you're going to be passing this, when you grow a little bit bigger, to other contractors to develop stuff, and when you pass them on to other contractors, they're not going to be asked, they are going to be asking these questions, but they'll either just stop work and say, your name was there, I don't know how to do that, or they'll be wanting you to know how to develop that. Yes.
Do you work with designers who know what they're kind of working towards? So do you work with, say, the WordPress project, do you work with designers who know how WordPress works?
No, we are lucky if we get designers that have WordPress knowledge. Some have, some don't, but in general, when we're vetting designers, we always have designers that work with web sites, so they've got at least an idea as to what's going on. We have had print designers work for us before, and that just hasn't worked out to them. So not necessary for WordPress, it does help, but not necessary. So we do all that bit, and we cycle around until the client's happy, and then it's build time. Okay, so so this is going back to content. We use this little service called Slick Plan, and yes, it's a paid service, but it's really, really cool. So it basically allows the clients to go in, and they can then drag and drop as a UI their site structures, the home, contact us. They can create as many as they want. It basically creates a layered navigation, so they can drag and drop. There's two great things about this. First is it gets them involved directly, and it starts them thinking about the content. Rather than just say to us, oh yeah, homepage, about it, yeah, go and develop that. when they're actually playing around in this, they actually think about, oh well, actually one of my main content shouldn't really be contact us, who am I, get a quote should go up here. So it gets them really involved and start to interact with the whole design, which is really, really good. The second point is it makes our job easier, because once they've finished and they're happy, you can install a WordPress plugin, export it from SlickPlan, import it, and it just creates all your pages.
Do you get much resistance from the clients on SlickPlan? I've looked into it.
We have had none. We've had people go, wow, this is great. Yeah.
Do you have clients that then create sites that just leave it as a bad information architecture that you then have to back them out of?
Yeah, it's not something you just give to clients and say, look, go and do. We give them access, but we've got access as well. My business partner, he's more SEO and marketing type of person, so he'll be liaising with them at that stage and reviewing the plans, and just making sure they're on the right track. Okay. Communications and content. We use Basecamp for 90% of all our stuff. We do have clients that don't particularly like Basecamp, and that's fair enough. You can never force anyone to do that, but it just makes our life a lot easier. We use it for project files, for tasks, to-dos, just to keep all the dates in mind. It just keeps everything in one easy access place, and we give the client access to that. Basecamp's not 100% great. It's good, but it's not 100% great. It doesn't have things like dependencies, so you can't set a task as being dependent on another one. It's not got kind of percentage overall for the project, so it's difficult just when you're glancing to see what's what. So we have found just in the last couple of weeks another alternative, which is called teamwork.com, and it's like Basecamp with all the added extras that you really wanted. And the pricing structure is pretty competitive, and they also have an import from Basecamp stuff as well. So we're kind of beta testing that at the moment. Okay, so now we're starting to get into the heavy stuff. One of the next steps I have to do is assess the what we call the server environment setup. And so we need to know metrics from the client. If they've got an existing site, how many people are using it, what they're using it for. They got high traffic, are they downloading lots of images, video files, how many people are using that site per day, because that is going to determine what we basically give them as a hosting platform. So this is our rough guide, our one, so it might be wrong, I don't know, but it's our one. So I generally say if there's less than 500 uniques or less than 500 visitors, we dump them on shared hosting with plan. Okay? So it's just not worth paying for a VPS, unless they want to. Between 500 and 1,500 uniques, then we basically say to our customer, look, if you're on a shared hosting, your site's going to struggle, it's going to be slow, it's going to affect your business, you really need to go on a virtual private server. So we usually put on a VPS with like 2 cores, 2 gigabytes of RAM, and again using LAMs and Linux Apache. Once you start ramping up a little bit, so once you've got like 1,500 uniques and over, then we can start to play around with VPS. So because VPSs are very highly customizable, you can usually just drag and drop the different RAM and the different the space and different cores. So it's really easy to build. And they usually come with stats so you can monitor to see. So as a rule of thumb, kind of look at the stats, and it's getting right about 75% to 80% usage. That's the time to up your cores, if the application's heavy, or up your RAM if there's lots of processes. So we play around with different configurations. We also suggest to use Nginx when it gets to that particular stage, and I'll go over Nginx later in a later slide. Okay. We can start getting up to 10,000 uniques a day. I had a customer just before Christmas who was I think 35,000 uniques every day. That's the time to farm off to people who know what they're doing. We provide these top services as a kind of managed WordPress hosting that we manage. But once you start getting that sort of traffic, you need serious type of hardware. So we farm that out to people like Bulletproof or Rackspace, Amazon, or even Google App Engine. We actually normally use Bulletproof or Rackspace, depending on the client is. Because you need something that scales, and these guys are really good. projects and architectures. So that's our kind of rule of thumb for server environment.
How do you host WordPress on those cloud services? Do you still use a kind of MySQL, or do you use a different database, or how do you manage that part?
For example, Google App Engine, they've got their own SQL server. So does Amazon, they've got their own SQL server, but they're both compatible with WordPress. I've not found a lot of stuff that isn't compatible with WordPress. You can actually run it on Microsoft SQL Server as well. Yeah, so I mean, any of these things should be scalable. Generally, we get involved in the larger clients. You know, we sit in with the talks with the hosting company and the client, and I used to understand most of what's happening, but these guys are really server geeks. They know their stuff. So you're talking about custom caching, servers, having multiple database instances that spin up and spin down, that sort of thing.
Can I just ask a completely question? Once you get to that point,
Yeah.
what is the cost as a base point?
Right. Costs for running something like a 10,000 unique on, say, Bulletproof, you'd probably be looking around about 23,000 a month.
23,000.
Yeah, for that sort of level. That's a sort of ballpark you're playing to get to that level. Okay, I promised about Nginx. Nginx is cool. I'm a geek, so I haven't said that. It's a Russian web server, and what Russians do well is they build good stuff that works and lasts for a long time. I've got a few examples of stuff. Mirror, Soyuz, which is still up and running. You know, Russians had Soyuz before the Americans had their Saturn V rockets. T-34 is a tank. Okay, it kind of won the Russians. I know I'm kind of getting off topic. T-34s, they won the Russian war in World War II. The Germans were producing these Tiger tanks. Precision engineering looked fantastic, nice and shiny. They could outdo any T-34. The Russians back in the workshop were getting bits of metal. They were banging them out to be good and soldering on these long things to make the turret. They were producing about 10 or 15 T-32s for every one Tiger tank, so that's why they won the war. Fantastic. MiGs are fantastic planes. AK-47, it's the best rifle in the world. And of course, Nginx. So I know I kind of a little bit of military bit there, but it's, what Nginx, how it differs from Apache is, Apache is what we call process driven. So every time it gets a request, it fires up all these processes. Okay? So it might have, say, 10, 20 different processes, and they're all sitting there listening for stuff that comes in. So you get a web page that comes in, process grabs it, spits it out. Okay? Now that works really well for a small amount of requests. You've got all this stuff sitting there waiting for traffic to happen. But when you start getting more traffic than there are processes, that's where it starts to struggle, because it's a finite number of processes that Apache can handle. Okay? Unless you start throwing uber amounts of RAM and CPU at it. It just doesn't scale very well. Nginx is event-driven, which means it has one master process, and it has lots of little workers. Okay? So when stuff comes in, it throws it to a worker. When stuff comes in, it throws it to a worker. 10,000 stuff comes in, it throws it to 5,000 workers. And it scales with your architecture. And that's why it's just super fast for large-scale websites. Okay, so back to me again. When we're thinking about what environment I'm going to be using to develop in, I think of what type of project am I setting up. Okay? So for most of our stuff, we use Genesis, the same as Cactus. For e-commerce stuff, we have WooCommerce, that's our product of choice. For directory listings, we use templates from app themes. There's templates called Job Roller, ClassyPress, and do kind of classify adverts and things like that. Or other, which means you have to develop a custom theme from scratch. What we do is we maintain standard builds of these, at least the top three anyway. So we'll have a standard build for Genesis, WooCommerce, and ClassyPress, which is a template from app themes. So what we mean by standard builds is that we maintain that on our development servers as physical files. We also maintain that in Git as well, a Git repository. So it requires obviously the parent theme, which is Genesis or WooCommerce, the app themes one. So that's installed as a parent. We then have a custom blank child theme for that. We have all of our plugins that we use, all of our branding as well, and all of our user settings. So we've got myself, we've got an admin user, my business partner, we've got a graphic designer in his LC Grab 1, we've got LC Dev 1, Dev 2, Dev 3 that you can just farm out to for that. We've all got passwords set in, same passwords as we use, and we've got debugging on as well. So that's kind of our standard template. So what was in the Genesis build? Well, we've got the Genesis framework, obviously. We use advanced custom fields. We use CPT automates, which allows you to create custom post types, Gravity forms, and Genesis visual hook guide for the developers. That's the bulk of our Genesis template. Really simple stuff. That does us 98% of all of our development, just there. Yep.
Do you mix Genesis and frameworks?
No.
Commerce?
No.
So things.
Genesis doesn't work very nicely with WooCommerce. There are different functions and hooks you've got to set up to enable the WooCommerce stuff to work with. When you start doing the kind of meaty type of real sort of custom shopping carts and things, that's when things tends to fall down. But we use WooCommerce chart themes, which is here. So we've got WooCommerce the parent, obviously. We've got a blank WooCommerce child theme, CPT automates, advanced custom fields, forms, sounds familiar, I know. We use something called Woo sidebars. My business partner, who likes to do a lot of SEO type stuff. So if you've got particular products, he likes to set up call to actions for different sidebars. We use this WP all import, and it has a WooCommerce add-on, which allows us to create CSV files of products and SKUs and descriptions, and basically just import it all in. It's pretty good and pretty stable. It works for most of the time. In our standard builds, we also have these other plugin suites that we use. Advanced automatic updates. We offer a managed WordPress service, but for clients who don't want that, we always bundle that. So it just allows them to choose, from WordPress 3.7, I think it was, introduced automatic updates, where it only updates point releases. So 3.7 to 3.7.1, 0.2, it won't jump to 3.8. So this advanced automatic updates allows you to choose whether you want to update point releases or WordPress core as well. So they'll just keep doing it. So it's pretty good. Managed WP is it's a service, allows us to do a one-click upgrade for a website. It's got a little worker plugin that uses it. So you get a dashboard, it's a paid service. You log in, you get a dashboard of all your sites. You update it, it says, you've got 40 plugins to update. Click on one button, it says update everything, it just goes and does it. So that's great. Debug bar for developers, it's a little page and shows you all the weird PHP stuff that's happening. We tell all of our developers that they must use that. If I get a website back from them and the debug bar is showing orange or red, then you get a slap on the wrist for that. Revision control, we have that as a standard. We always set revision to 2. Because by standard, WordPress is unlimited, which means your database goes very, very quickly. Revolution slider for awesomely large sliders. Everyone loves those. Slip plan, importer, stop media comments spamming, which stops people finding your images which have a page and then spamming those.
Is that like ASCII then?
Similar. Yeah. Each attachment that you upload for WordPress automatically has a page associated with it. You might not see it, but you can always get to it unless you disable it. And if you've not disabled comments, people can leave comments on your attachment page. So you might see all this spam stuff coming through and going, where's that coming from? And that can stop it.
Thank you.
I use a Kismet app myself, and I had a rash of spam on
application.
Right,
So
okay.
this is like where your definition is.
And it's our plugin, so it's lots
Right.
video user manuals, because I hate training, so we install that. It shows people how to do all the core WordPress stuff, uploading, editing, all that sort of thing. It saves us oodles of times. WordPress security is our software firewall of choice. WordPress SEO is our SEO of choice, most one, everyone uses that. WP Migrate database, we use that to move the databases along to different things. So when we're on the development server, we move it to production server. This one allows us to export the database. It also goes through the database and updates the URL. The good thing about this is it also updates the URL in what we call serialized data. We only get that too much, but if you try and use Notepad to do the replace, you'll usually find your navigation widgets going missing. WP Minify squashes down your CSS files or JavaScript files and type things. We use WP Supercache, or Cache, whatever you want to say, for most of our applications, unless you're running Nginx, which we use WP Total Cache, because it has Nginx specific type stuff in it. Xcloner we use for our backups because we can run that via a cron tab. Cron tab is on the server, it's a Linux thing that runs scheduled. We don't like WordPress cron, it's a bit iffy sometimes, so we like to have total control of that. So when we're setting up backups, we'll do it from our server cron job to then call Xcloner to do our backup to S3. Or we just get a client to pay for WordPress, which is real time.
Don't you manage WP to do backup?
No. Because Xcloner does it fantastically for free. I mean, we go up to Amazon S3, we pay about 75 euro cents a month, and we've got about 50 clients on that. There is an end. Okay. We do branding in our standard builds as well. So we use a must-use plugin, which means that people can deactivate it and can't uninstall it. Yes, they go in by FTP and delete it, but most clients aren't going to do that. So the types of brandings that we do that are obvious to the client is a login screen. We've got our logo up there, right in the face. We do a little power by, blank canvas down the bottom. We've got lots of other little branding things that you notice when you go through the dashboard as well. But they're all encapsulated within a must-use plugin.
Do you just put them in a, sorry to interrupt, do you just put them in a directory? Is there just a directory that you put them into?
The directory is called MU-plugins, and it's in the WP content.
And if you still get the settings.
You still get settings, but you can't deactivate, you can't activate them, you can't uninstall.
You still get settings.
You still get settings.
So I can, yeah, cool.
The only downside is it doesn't automatically update. So that's the downside, and it doesn't allow you to have, you can't do it, but it doesn't allow you to put the plugins in folder names. You've got to be a file. But you can create your own folder name which reference them. So a little caveat. We've also got support built into our standard plugins, and support is in their dashboard. So this is like a dashboard widget. It uses PayPal and Silverstripe. It's on our website, so when you sign up to our support or hosting, we get ping back from Silverstripe or PayPal, adds them as a customer, and pay, so blah, 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 blah. We also reach out to Zendesk as well, and brand in all the stuff for Zendesk. We've got all the data on one of our servers in a JSON RESTful API. So our plugin, when it kicks off, it goes and listens to our servers, grabs the customer ID, downloads their information, and displays them in this little helpful widget for them as well. So now we get to Git. Yay! So hands up who doesn't do version control for development. I didn't do version control for a good few years, and then I kind of slowly got into it. I was kind of forced to do it when I did my first plugin. I had to use SVN to get up to WordPress, and then I started using SVN for all my stuff on my local machine. One of the biggest questions I get asked from other developers is what's the difference between Git and SVN? Start with SVN. SVN is centralized, which means it needs a server. Okay? You need a server somewhere. You need to push and pull stuff onto the server. So, which means if you're working, you can only really work when you've got access to a server. Git's distributed, okay? Which means that when you download stuff from the Git version repo repository, you've got your own repository there, and you can add and push and commit stuff with that, even if you've got no internet connection. So next time you can be working on a plane, for example, or a dark basement, and then once you get back into your internet, it just syncs all the stuff up again. Okay? That's the major two differences. Plus Git's just now, it's just cool. So everyone wants to use Git. So, an uber quick intro to Git. We're going to be talking about Git later on in the year, so I don't want to go too much into this, but just to get an idea as to what we use it for. We use Git with Bitbucket, which gives us private repos for free. And we use Git with GitHub for public repos, because everyone else is on GitHub. There's a huge community there, so you get really good kind of feedback and support from there. It's only a 4-step process to create your own version controlled software. So you create a repository on your local server. Okay? Then you add the local server as like a remote repository. You then add and commit and push stuff to a branch, and then that's it. It goes under a version control. It's pretty simple to do. It sounds really difficult, but it's really easy once you.
What's a branch?
I'll get into branches. Okay, first, pull, add, commit, and push. You'll see these words associated with Git. What are they? Pull will pull a file down from a repository, and the repository is just a collection of all your files, right? So it pulls down stuff from the Git repository. You adds the files that you're working on to your repository. A commit is for when you change a file. You're going to commit that change to that particular file, and you mark it with descriptions. And a push is when you push a committed file up to the repository. So those are kind of the 4 basic commands that you use with version control. It's pretty much the same with SVN as well. Git cloning, okay? This allows you to clone the repository. So the idea is you've got, say in Bitbucket, you've got your standard build, it's all in Git up there in the server somewhere on the interwebs. You can do Git clone, give it the server name, and it brings that entire repository down onto your local machine. Okay, and this is the power of Git. So that means you've got your own little repository, and you can work on it anywhere you want. Yeah, so that's it. So we clone the repository, you can do push and pull changes, and Git takes care of the synchronization. Branches. Yay. So branches and merges. Okay. When you have a new repository, it creates something called a master branch. Okay, this is where your kind of main code is in. Now, what I tend to do is when I'm developing something, I do Git clone, it comes down to my local machine, it's got the master branch, I then create a branch called will. Okay, so you can think of them as horizontal stripes, horizontal branches. So master branch has still got the code base, it doesn't change. And I've now got a branch called will, which is a duplicate of master. I then use that one to add on functionality to, like code a new plugin or update functions.php and CSS, have a look at the logo, does it work? Yeah, it does, cool. If it doesn't, the code goes pear-shaped, I'm just delete. Okay. Which means I've not changed anything on the master branch, it's still the same. So I can still go on using that. If I did all the development and test and it works, well, awesome, I can then do a merge. A merge merges all the changes we've done on your branch into the master branch, which then you can then distribute as the final episode. That's kind of a rough idea for branching and merging.
I'm right.
So I have a graphic here, you probably won't be able to see from back there, but it'll be on the slides later on. It gives you a rough indication as to what's happening. So here you've got your master branch. We've got a couple of other branches that have been duplicated, that another couple of developers are working on different features. So they're working on stuff, and they're adding it, and then it's different commits. But then you've got this what called stable branch. Again, it's another copy of the master, and then someone's found this horrible bug. So what you want to do is you want to then create a hotfixes branch, so duplicate the master one, create a hotfix branch. You then go and you try and update that bug, get rid of it, fantastic, it's worked. Quickly merge it back into the master branch, and you also fire out this version 1.1 to fix the bug. In the meantime, developers are still going along, and because they're constantly pulling from the master branch to sync it, then that means that the hotfix that was added is now in master, and now it comes into theirs when you push it. So everything kind of merges together. So that's the kind of the new model for people working in distributed environments. You've got these different people working in their own little copy of this master branch, but they're adding new features in. And every so often, everything just kind of gets merged in and gets pulled down into local.
Do they have to do a pull sort of periodically to make sure that the elements on the changes?
Git ignore is a little file that allows you to specify stuff you don't want to put in Git. And you may think, why wouldn't I want to put everything in Git? But you don't particularly want to put things like WordPress core in Git because you don't want to. You're not developing that. You're not doing version control on that. They do all that stuff themselves. So you can set things like WP admin, WP includes. Just don't version control. It includes it, but it just doesn't version control. There's also other things if you're working with PHP Storm, it creates this little hidden folder called .ide with all this kind of stuff, project settings. You don't want that stuff going up in Git either, so you can just ignore as much stuff as you want. Okay, so our Git environment, we've got the Git repository used on Bitbucket. It contains our standard builds. Every so often I will update if we find something new to update it with. What we do is initially we'll it's a bit not missing from there. Initially we'll put stuff up in the repo. We'll then pull it down onto the local machine. So that's me working on my local PC. And then create a branch called will for me to use. Once we've got to a particular point, push all the stuff back up to the repository. I then go to the staging server, like SSH in. I add it as another remote repository. I then do a git pull. I pull all the stuff down, and that's it ready for the client to see. So then I'll go off and work on some other features while the client's giving me feedback on the staging server. Once I get to a particular release, I'll do commits, push it back up, I'll log back into the staging server and do a git pull, just pull down that page. When we come ready to go live, we do a different branch. We copy the branch from master, and we create a branch called live. And we do pretty much exactly the same. We log in SSH to the live production server and do a git pull live. It close down the live branch. So the idea is that I'm working on here, putting versions, clients going, yep, okay, no, that's bad, and your versions, we get to stable release, say tag version 1, and then I copy version 1 onto the live branch, and that's our new production. And that just keeps going on, the cycle just keeps going on.
How do you manage database resident data in version?
Yeah, we generally don't. We have different instances for the different servers. So databases can't be controlled by Git, unfortunately. It'd be great if we could. I'm sure somebody will find a way of doing it so far. But we use the migrate database, WP migrate database for moving the different databases. But essentially they've got their own 3 different instances of databases on there.
So if you're managing client data which is evolving over time, do you keep snapshots of it? Or
yeah, what we do is if the client's adding data to staging, okay, we'll get to a point where if they've added so much, then yeah, I'll take a snapshot. I'll use the migrate plugin on the staging server, download, and you copy the database on there. Because we don't, I kind of ignore things like the WP content, mostly for my development. I'll just FTP a zip file down with the content onto my local, just unzip it, bury it. That stuff doesn't need to be version controlled, so that's why we don't have it here. Okay, this is my development environment setup. Because I've got that stuff in there all ready to go. I basically create a new site from the standard build, the staging server, add commit and push the new Git repo, pull it to my local, create a branch called build, and it literally takes me 5 minutes to do. So I've now got a development server, a staging server, a copy on my machine, and that's that. So it's easy once you get it all set up. So there's no FTP involved, no zip files, just like Git. So what goes in the Git repos? You want to put the WordPress core, and then you get a question about automatic updates. You know, if WordPress updates itself, how to get that back into Git. They're all good questions. There's basically two ways. One is to include the entire site into Git, so WordPress includes admin everything. You should get ignored to the parts you don't want to be version controlled. The better way is to include WordPress as what's called a Git submodule, which means that you let Git and WordPress update themselves, and you're not contributing to the actual update file. I don't want to get into submodules and stuff too much. We're starting to really kind of go down into what Git is, and it requires a lot more explanation before you talk about it. But I'll just kind of throw those ideas in case anyone's got that kind of question about plugins and WordPress updating. So yeah, we'll do it again another day. Promise. Okay. Almost done.
For example,
Yeah.
if you're new to Git, there's an app called SourceTree, which is a visual client for Git that makes the adoption easier. So you can point and click and check in and say command line goes right away.
What's that called again?
It's called SourceTree.
SourceTree. I'm a command line person.
Likewise, but,
Yeah.
For
It's
learning
good for people to
concepts,
learn. Yeah. Visuals big though. Thanks for that. A lot of people have asked me, should you be developing object-oriented programming or not object-oriented? What's the caveats? Why would you do it? Why wouldn't you? I always go with object-oriented. I think it's easier to develop and to test that stuff. But the caveat is most of the WordPress core is not object-oriented. But I believe it will be pretty soon. We're working towards that. If you look through all the updates that keep coming on, more and more stuff is being pushed to classes. We develop all of our plugins in OO, and all of our functions. It's got classes and class files associated with it. Yeah, it just allows us to be easier to build, easier to maintain, easier to do unit testing and so on. Okay, some of the apps that you use. PHP Storm. I used to use Dreamweaver, and it did me very well for many years. Then I found PHP Storm, and it's just amazeballs. It really is. It does like real-time error checking. It's got a full Git client in it as of the last version, so you can do pulls and pushes and commits straight from within PHP Storm. You don't have to type in any command lines. It's got PHP doc support, which is another one. It's in our guidelines for our developers or contractors. They must supply documentation for the functions and classes and references and in English. I got caught out with that one once. It's all this Russian stuff back, my God. PHP unit support, so you can run these PHP unit testing straight from within PHP Storm. I'll give you a report for that. Code completion, it does code completion for most things. Unfortunately, it doesn't have a WordPress module in there yet. But what it does do, it actually reads through all the files that's under its control. It'll look in the classes and try and come up with an approximation of what we should be using. But I believe they are working on a WordPress unit for code completion. And PHP refactoring, which is basically you've got a class or a function, and it allows you to make sure that you take that function out, okay, and then it still does the same thing. It allows you to break it down in a better way. So you might have this huge function that produces this output, and either refactoring is you then reduce it to a more efficient function that produces the same output. That's what refactoring is. Vagrant. Vagrant allows you to create these virtual environments, as I said before, so you can build a CentOS or an Ubuntu platform. Why would you want to do that? Maybe if you're developing on your own, you wouldn't do that. If you're developing with more than 2 or 3 subcontractors, you might want to make sure that they're right on the same platform, so they've got the same issues. I think more importantly, and we find out this when we're doing a project for a larger client, is there's less chances when you're using the same platform when you're developing them on as a production environment, you're going to get less issues. We had people developing on Windows and Mac, and then we moved it over to a Linux version, I can't remember what it was. And there was particular issues there with some of the functions and that particular production environment, which we would have caught if we were using the exact same production environment. So that's where Vagrant comes in. It's a useful tool, but maybe only on the higher end projects. Grunt I mentioned before, it's a JavaScript task runner. So yeah, it basically automates all those boring but necessary tasks. It's really, really good. It's a little bit complicated to set up. Well, not complicated, it's a little bit, it takes a bit to get into. A lot of configuration files you need to set up and download. But once it's done, man, it's just so easy. It takes me 2 seconds, type in grunt, it does all that stuff for you, and just release it to production. It's really, really good. PHP unit testing. I think Kristen's going to talk about theme unit testing. PHP unit testing is along the same line. Why would you bother doing it? A lot of people don't. I think once you start to move into larger clients or bigger projects, make it something you don't want biting on the bum. Okay? So basically, the biggest thing for us is avoid nasty mistakes. Okay? So if you're testing functions, what you're basically testing against the output. So what you're putting in, and you test to see the expected output. Unit tests allows you to write all these different scripts that will test all your functions. So you can put inputs and then you test for outputs. And it's just a big list that says this is passed, that's failed. So it just, as I say, it shows your commitment to professionalism, and it removes all these kind of nasty errors that you might release something, and then the client is sitting there and go, I wonder what happens if I type in this, failure. And it also helps with work with contractors as well. If you have PHP unit testing, you can get stuff back from them. You can just run a PHP test, and it can show you whether that stuff's failed or passed. Composer. Some of you might not have heard of Composer. It's called a package dependency manager for PHP. It's relatively new, I think a year and a half, 2 years. What it does is, if you're working on a project that has lots of different libraries, like lots of JavaScript libraries, you might have like a chart library. It basically allows you to download those into your project as the latest versions. And you might find that some libraries are also dependent on other libraries, so a particular jQuery version will only run for this, blah, blah, blah. There's thousands of these types of packages on the Composer website that you can download and install. And like Composer, worry about updating all those packages and working out which version works with which version. So you can just install Composer and add in all your different libraries you need to use and just let it work out, and it downloads them all and installs them and just make sure they all work together. I think WordPress is actually in the Composer repository as well. So
it's get composer.org.
Cool, I'll change that. Okay, production deployment. Getting towards the end now, I know you're all tired. Out first deployment, we always do, we never do it during core hours. It doesn't matter where they are, if they're in the UK, Ireland, or in Sydney, it's always out hours deployment. And out hours depends on the clients. For some people it can be 9 to 5, others it might be 6 till 10, whatever. But that's one of the things that we check initially in the project kickoff. We pull the live Git branch with production servers, as shown before on the slides. We do a production site QA. So I do a production site QA. It's an 82-step internal guide, and it goes through everything from checking to the general settings, the general writing. I think it doesn't have the disclude search engine thing clicked on. Just things like that. All these things go down. So they must be completed before we give it to the client. Once that's done, and as part of the guides, the guidelines, is we add our clients to MailChimp. So we've got a couple of MailChimp lists. So we add them to MailChimp. We use that for system updates. So we might say, look, we're updating our VPS next week between these 2 hours, just to make you aware. We also have autoresponders as well. So a month after we delivered the project, we'll send them an email to say, hi, how's it going? launch a new website, let us know. And we do that for 3 months, 6 months, and 12 months as well, just to keep in contact. And these are all set up, you don't have to do anything with them, it just happens. After that, we then set up a client with Zendesk, and we do use Zendesk for our support. So if they pick up the phone and say, server broken, you go, that's nice, send us an email. So, or if they send us an email, we'll forward it to Zendesk. We train them to use that. Okay? If they put it in our base camp, okay, and it's a major urgent issue, and then they're on the phone saying, why did not fix that? We say, because we don't look at base camp for severe issues, we look at Zendesk. So they should know. These are all the images I stole. And that's it.